Africa's political map is changing faster than at any point in the last 50 years. What once looked like a stable region anchored by ECOWAS, one of the continent's most influential economic and political blocs, is now breaking apart in real time. Not with quiet diplomacy, not with slow negotiations, but with decisive moves from a new group of military-led states reshaping West Africa's direction. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, once considered some of the region's weakest and most vulnerable nations, have now become the center of a geopolitical shift few expected. Their joint withdrawal from ECOWAS has rewritten the political rulebook. Their new military alliance, the Alliance of Sahel States, is not simply another regional bloc. It is a declaration that West Africa is no longer willing to operate under external pressure, foreign-defined security models, or policies shaped in Western capitals. The world's major powers are watching closely, especially France, the United States, and the European Union. Because what is happening in West Africa today is more than a regional dispute. It is a transformation of political identity, economic sovereignty, and the structure of influence across the continent. For decades, ECOWAS played the role of regional stabilizer, backed heavily by Western funding, Western security partnerships, and Western diplomatic priorities. Critics say this support shaped the bloc's decisions, especially on sanctions and military interventions. But the coup-led governments of the Sahel argue that ECOWAS no longer represents African interests, only external ones. And now, their exit has triggered a collapse of unity that ECOWAS has never experienced before. This documentary explores how the ECOWAS crisis began, why it escalated, and how the new military alliance is positioning itself as the center of West Africa's political future. It examines the economic implications, the security consequences, and the role global powers now play, directly and indirectly, in the region's escalating realignment. Above all, this story reveals something bigger than any single country: the rise of a new African geopolitical architecture, independent, assertive, and unwilling to follow old rules. The collapse of ECOWAS unity marks the beginning of a new era. What comes next may redefine Africa's political landscape for decades. Across the Sahel, the wind has shifted. Borders that once symbolized cooperation now represent political divides. A region that for years operated under a single economic and diplomatic umbrella is now separating into competing visions of sovereignty and security. ECOWAS, long seen as the anchor of West African stability, is facing the most profound challenge in its existence. And it began with three countries: Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. For years, these states were described as fragile, unstable, or dependent on international assistance. Today, they stand at the center of a rebellion against the political order that shaped West Africa for decades. The decision to withdraw from ECOWAS shocked the world. But beneath the headlines lies a deeper story, one shaped by years of frustration, security failures, and a rising demand for African-led solutions. This is the story of how ECOWAS began to fracture, and how a new military alliance is positioning itself to reshape the future. Founded in 1975, ECOWAS emerged as one of Africa's most ambitious regional institutions. Its mandate was bold: integrate economies, remove trade barriers, promote free movement, and enforce collective political stability. For years, it worked. Trade expanded, borders opened, travel became easier. Investors saw West Africa as a market with unified rules and shared ambitions. But beneath the surface, ECOWAS carried internal contradictions: political, economic, and ideological. Wealthier coastal states like Nigeria, Ghana, and Côte d'Ivoire dominated the bloc's direction. Meanwhile, landlocked nations struggled with underinvestment and unequal development. ECOWAS also became increasingly dependent on foreign partners for funding, peacekeeping support, and political mediation. This dependency became a central point of tension. When coups erupted across the Sahel, ECOWAS responded with sanctions, border closures, and political pressure, tools encouraged and backed by Western allies who feared political instability would threaten their military bases, mining interests, and counter-terror operations. For the military governments, this confirmed a belief: ECOWAS was no longer acting as a West African institution, but as an enforcer of foreign interests. This perception would ignite a turning point. Between 2020 and 2023, A wave of military takeovers swept through Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Each coup had its own local triggers: spiraling insecurity, collapsing governance, growing public anger, and frustration with years of foreign military operations that delivered few results. But despite their differences, the coup governments shared one message: West Africa needed a new political path. ECOWAS demanded quick returns to civilian rule. The Sahel governments refused. Sanctions hardened. Border closures intensified. Electricity, trade, and banking networks were disrupted. For millions across the region, the sanctions created economic pain and humanitarian crises. For the military leaders, these measures proved ECOWAS had become punitive rather than supportive, reactive instead of cooperative. And so, in a joint declaration, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger announced their collective withdrawal. The world did not expect the shockwave that followed. In place of ECOWAS membership, the three nations formed the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a pact that went beyond political symbolism. The AES was designed as a mutual defense alliance, a coordinated economic zone, a unified foreign policy platform, a security bloc prioritizing independence from external military powers. For decades, the Sahel relied on security partnerships largely defined by Western strategies. French troops, American drone bases, and European training missions shaped much of the region's military structure. The AES rejected this model. Mali expelled French forces. Burkina Faso shifted towards regional cooperation. Niger ended key security agreements. These decisions signaled a new ideological direction, one driven by sovereignty, self-reliance, and regional unity without external guardianship. To supporters, this was West Africa reclaiming its independence. To critics, it was a dangerous gamble. But regardless of perspective, one fact became clear. The AES now represents one of the most assertive political experiments in modern African geopolitics. The collapse of ECOWAS unity has significant economic implications. The Sahel countries rely heavily on coastal neighbors for access to ports and imports. Leaving ECOWAS risks higher trade barriers, reduced mobility, and new diplomatic frictions. However, the EES argues that ECOWAS sanctions already disrupted trade long before the withdrawal, and that a new economic strategy is necessary. AES leaders have outlined plans to develop shared energy infrastructure, regional rail corridors, joint military procurement, an integrated mining strategy across gold, uranium, and other resources. These plans are ambitious but reflect a central belief: economic sovereignty is impossible without regional autonomy. Meanwhile, ECOWAS faces a crisis of identity. Without three of its largest landmass members, the bloc's political influence has weakened. Its ability to enforce sanctions or coordinate military interventions is now deeply questioned. The Western response to the ECOWAS split has been cautious but visibly concerned. France, which holds deep historic ties to the region, has seen its influence decline rapidly. Military bases have closed. Diplomatic relations have tightened. Mining contracts face uncertainty. The United States has taken a more measured approach, focused on counterterrorism stability and avoiding deeper political rupture. Meanwhile, Russia and China have increased their outreach, not through military takeover, but through mining agreements, energy partnerships, infrastructure projects, and diplomatic engagement. To some analysts, the ECOWAS crisis is part of a larger global competition for influence. To others, it is a sign that West Africa is entering a period of geopolitical independence that reduces reliance on any external power. The ECOWAS crisis is still unfolding. The long-term consequences remain uncertain, but some outcomes are already visible. West Africa is becoming multipolar. No single bloc can claim dominance. Sovereignty is the new political currency. Governments are increasingly judged by their ability to act independently. External influence is weakening. Foreign military and political pressure is less effective than before. The Sahel Alliance is gaining identity and public support. Many citizens in the region see the new bloc as a path to dignity and autonomy. ECOWAS must reform or risk further fragmentation. Calls for new leadership models and reduced foreign dependency are rising. The collapse of ECOWAS unity is not just a political event. It is a defining moment in Africa's geopolitical transformation.